being involved in the decision-making processes, or arguments or whatever. It really is quite difficult. I think if I'd just been, say, a bass player all my life.
John Deacon was never the one standing in front of the microphone, yet he's the one who made the whole world hum along to the melodies he wrote. How could someone who penned hit after hit vanish completely? In a band as vibrant and flamboyant as Queen, where Freddie Mercury owned the stage, Brian May lit it up with every riff, and Roger Taylor exploded with energy behind the drums. It was John, the quietest of them all, who created Another One Bites the Dust, I Want to Break Free, and You're My Best Friend. Hits that made the entire planet sway. No drama, no flamboyance, no scandals. John Deacon was like a ghost in the spotlight, quietly stepping into greatness and just as quietly slipping away without a single word of farewell. After Freddie's passing, he disappeared entirely from the music industry. No reunions, no press conferences, not a single appearance, even as Queen continued to live on in various forms. And it's precisely that disappearance, the silence that has lasted more than 2 decades, that turned John into one of the most mysterious figures in rock history. Fans keep asking, why did he walk away? Was it grief, disagreement, or simply enough? To understand who John Deacon truly is, it's not enough to look at the songs he wrote. One has to turn back the clock to a childhood marked by loss, the quiet years within Queen, the shadows behind the spotlight, and ultimately the decision to live a modest life, as if the fame had never existed. This is the journey of the quietest member of a legendary band, and sometimes silence echoes louder than any note ever played. Early life. John Richard Deacon was born on August 19, 1951, in Leicester, a quiet industrial city in England's East Midlands. His family was middle class, comfortable, but not wealthy. His father, Arthur Henry Deacon, worked for the Norwich Union Insurance Company, while his mother, Lillian Molly Deacon, was a gentle, reserved, full-time homemaker. John was their only child. From an early age, John stood out not for boldness, but for his remarkably quiet nature. He wasn't drawn to sports, nor did he share the boisterous energy of other boys his age. Instead, he was fascinated by electronics, dismantling radios, building amplifiers, and teaching himself how to construct sound equipment from books. He could sit in his room for hours without saying a word, not out of sadness, but because his mind was immersed in tinkering and discovery. John attended Linden Primary School, then Beaumont Leys Secondary School, where he earned admiration not for liveliness, but for his exceptional academic performance, especially in science and technical subjects. His teachers described him as quiet but precise in everything he does. But that peaceful life was abruptly torn apart in 1965, when his father died of a heart attack. John was only 14. The loss was a devastating blow, not just emotionally, but also to the family's financial and emotional stability. His mother became more withdrawn, and John retreated even deeper into his inner world, a place filled with music, electronics, and silent contemplation. After that tragedy, John grew more deeply attached to music. He picked up the guitar early on, influenced by the Beatles, The Who, and especially Motown, with its groovy, rhythm-driven bass lines. In 1965, he formed his first band, The Opposition, later renamed The New Opposition, where John played bass, wrote songs, and even handled the band's technical equipment. It was a dual role that revealed his versatility. The band performed at local dances and school clubs and was often praised as very professional for their age. Despite his passion for music, John remained committed to his studies. In 1969, he was accepted into Chelsea College of Science and Technology, later part of the University of London, where he majored in electronics engineering. He moved to London, a crucial turning point that marked his transition into adulthood and brought him closer to the professional music scene. At Chelsea College, John didn't play music as frequently. He prioritized academics, but he still participated in the occasional informal jam session. Then, one day in February 1971, through a mutual friend, he heard that a band named Queen was looking for a bassist. He showed up for an audition and instantly impressed Freddie Mercury, Brian May, and Roger Taylor. It wasn't just that he played well, they recognized in him a true technical mind, quiet and free of drama. Exactly what the group needed at the time. And just like that, the boy who once tinkered with radios and quietly lived in the shadow of his father's absence stepped into one of the greatest bands of all time, armed with his bass guitar, an engineer's brain, and a wounded heart no one could see. Early career. In February 1971, in a small room in London, 3 members of a young band named Queen were waiting for someone to audition. Not a singer, not a guitarist, but a bassist who was good enough and normal enough. They had tried out a few people already, but all had too many issues. Some were flashy, others lacked technical skill, and some simply weren't stable. Then walked in an electronics engineering student named John Deacon, neatly groomed, soft-spoken, and almost entirely unremarkable at first glance. But within minutes of plugging in and playing, he left them stunned. Brian May recalled, "John didn't just play well. He listened closely and played with incredible precision and cleanliness. He had a great sense of musicality and wasn't trying to show off. And that was exactly what we needed." John was immediately chosen as the final piece of Queen, not because he was the most dazzling, but because he made the rest fit together. From that moment on, the lineup of Freddie Mercury, Brian May, Roger Taylor, and John Deacon was set and would never change. In the early years, John's role remained relatively quiet. He didn't write much, rarely spoke up, and seldom stepped into the heated creative debates between Freddie and Brian, who often clashed over harmonies, lyrics, or artistic direction. But behind the scenes, John was steadily making invaluable contributions, designing Brian's amplifier setup, suggesting ways to improve stage sound, and gradually developing his own songwriting style, focused on rhythm and straightforward melody, something Queen hadn't yet fully explored. The band's first albums, Queen, 1973, and Queen II, 1974, were largely dominated by Freddie and Brian's compositions. But by sheer heart attack, 1974, John's influence became more noticeable. His song, Misfire, written and performed almost entirely by him on guitar, was Queen's first foray into pop-funk, hinting at a softer, more accessible direction. But it wasn't until 1975's A Night at the Opera, with the release of You're My Best Friend, a love song John wrote for his wife, that his name truly gained attention. You're My Best Friend wasn't as grandiose as Bohemian Rhapsody, nor as hard-hitting as Stone Cold Crazy, but it was the kind of song everyone could sing along to, everyone could feel, and everyone has, at some point, dedicated to someone special. That was John's signature, not complexity, but emotional precision. From being the least talked-about member of the band, John gradually asserted himself as a quietly powerful songwriter. He never tried to be the center of attention, but his music grounded Queen, preventing it from tipping too far into the extremes of theatricality or artistic abstraction. He was the one who brought the band closer to the public, to pop, to funk, to popular taste, without compromising their uniqueness. And that is true genius, never stepping into the spotlight, yet still making the whole world listen. Career success. After joining Queen in 1971, John Deacon quickly proved himself not only as a rock-solid bassist, but also as the man who helped shape the band's unique sound. While Freddie Mercury dazzled, Brian May exploded with technical brilliance, and Roger Taylor radiated rock energy, John, soft-spoken and discreet, quietly left a mark that was impossible to replace. In the early years, he contributed silently in the studio, assembling amplifiers, fine-tuning sound systems. But the real turning point came with You're My Best Friend, a tender love song John wrote for his wife, released in 1975 on the album A Night at the Opera. With its warm electric piano, played by John himself, the track became an international hit and a wedding staple across generations. It wasn't as grand as Bohemian Rhapsody, but it struck a deeply honest emotional chord. And that was John's signature. Understated, yet profoundly effective. His peak as a songwriter came in 1980 with Another One Bites the Dust. Inspired by the funk of Chic, John crafted something radically different. Simple, repeating bass lines, powerful groove, no excess, yet utterly captivating. At first, the rest of Queen hesitated, but it was Michael Jackson who urged them to release it. The result? The song hit #1. One on the Billboard Hot 100, sold over 7 million copies in the US alone, and launched Queen beyond rock into disco, hip-hop, and mainstream pop culture. 4 years later, John surprised again with I Want to Break Free, a catchy pop song carrying a powerful message of liberation. Though the video was banned in the US due to its drag queen imagery, the song became an anthem of resistance in South Africa, Eastern Europe, Latin America. Once again, a song by John, the man who never spoke in public, resonated with millions yearning for freedom. Between 1975 and 1986, John didn't write as prolifically as Freddie or Brian, but nearly every track he did pen endured. The uplifting Spread Your Wings, the bold Back Chat, the approachable Need Your Loving Tonight. He served as the stabilizer within Queen, never arguing, never stealing the spotlight, just doing his part. Roger Taylor once said, "He always got it right on the first take, and he never shouted." Outside of songwriting, John was Queen's silent engineer, designing gear for Brian May, refining studio sound, contributing to production structures few ever knew about. As Queen entered their golden age, tens of millions of records sold, stadiums packed, few realized that much of their success stemmed from what John Deacon wrote and what he didn't. He never stood center stage, never grabbed the mic, never needed a media campaign. Just one perfectly placed bass line, one emotionally spot-on song, and one well-timed silence. And John became a legend in his own quiet, steady, and enduring way. And that's the truest form of success, when you don't have to shout to make the whole world listen. Rumors and shadows. If the 1970s and 1980s were the years when John Deacon quietly shined as a songwriter, then the years that followed marked an entirely different chapter, a mysterious withdrawal. And it was that very decision, to walk away without a word, that made John one of the most enigmatic figures in rock history. The turning point came in late 1991, when Freddie Mercury, the soul of Queen, passed away due to AIDS-related complications. For the band, it was an immeasurable loss. But for John, the quiet and deeply introspective one, it was almost a total collapse. He didn't speak publicly, didn't grant interviews, he just fell silent. But those close to the band knew he no longer had the heart for any of it. In 1992, he appeared at the Freddie Mercury tribute concert at Wembley Stadium, the last time the public saw him on stage with Queen. He continued to participate in a few memorial recordings, but gradually faded into the background. Then in 1997, after recording the song No One But You, Only the Good Die Young, in memory of Freddie, John Deacon officially disappeared from the music industry. There was no retirement announcement, no farewell press conference, not even a statement. Just silence. From that point on, he declined every invitation to reunite, even as Brian May and Roger Taylor began touring again under the banners Queen plus Paul Rodgers and later Queen plus Adam Lambert. When Queen was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2001, John was absent. He was nowhere to be seen at the Bohemian Rhapsody film premiere or any of the anniversary TV specials. The silence, spanning decades, inevitably raised questions. What happened to John Deacon? Some rumors suggest he fell into depression after Freddie's death, possibly compounded by social anxiety, something that would align with his introverted nature since youth. Another theory is that he disapproved of Queen continuing without Freddie. Brian May himself admitted in an interview, John didn't agree with using the Queen name for any new incarnation. To him, Queen ended with Freddie. No scandals, no public fights, but those subtle remarks were enough to make it clear. There was a fracture between them, quiet but irreparable. Another hidden layer. John still holds a significant share in Queen productions, which means he retains veto power and continues to earn millions annually from royalties. While he no longer performs, every major commercial decision made by Queen must pass through him. It's a strange kind of presence, never seen yet always there, a financial ghost behind the curtain. In an era where every star scrambles to cling to the spotlight, John Deacon's complete disappearance has become something of a phenomenon, dubbed by fans as the Lost Queen. People are not angry, but instead curious, even sympathetic. No one truly blames him, because everyone understands this is the silence of someone who once loved too deeply and lost too much. Sometimes the choice to walk away doesn't come from weakness, but from having reached the very limits of love, loyalty, and a grief that can't be spoken aloud. Personal life. While the world fixated on the spotlight, John Deacon chose to step into the shadows, where family, peace, and a life free from prying eyes awaited. Unlike his Queen bandmates, whether it was Roger Taylor's rebellious flair or Freddie Mercury's openly gay relationships, John took a different path. One surprisingly ordinary. He met Veronica Tetzlaff in the late 1960s when they were both very young. Veronica was a student teacher from Sheffield. Their love grew quietly, without the fanfare of celebrity couples. In 1975, they got married, right as Queen was exploding into global fame following the success of Bohemian Rhapsody. When asked why he chose to marry so early in the midst of rising stardom, John once replied simply, "Because I knew she was the only one I needed." They settled in Putney, a quiet residential area in South London. Over more than 4 decades together, they had 6 children, and to this day, as little as the media knows, the family has stayed out of the public eye. No social media, no red carpets, no publicity. Unlike many rock stars who fell into cycles of drugs, affairs, or financial scandals, John Deacon seems to have had no major personal controversies. He didn't drink excessively, didn't party hard, and always made time for his family. During Queen's long tours, he was often the one who called home the most, according to Roger Taylor. For John, fame was never the goal, just the price he paid to follow his love for music. After stepping away from Queen in 1997, he disappeared entirely from public life. But according to neighbors, he still showed up here and there, grocery shopping, walking his dog, sipping coffee at a small local cafe. No bodyguards, no spectacle, and rarely recognized, because it had been so long since he appeared in the press. Some fans on Reddit shared that they saw him on the street and considered asking for an autograph, but didn't, because it felt like he no longer belonged to that world. The bond between John and Veronica remains a quiet inspiration for many fans. No red carpet affection, no magazine interviews full of praise, but their marriage has lasted over half a century in silence, just like John himself. He never spoke about his wife in interviews, but he did write her a song, "You're My Best Friend," the sweetest love song Queen ever released. In a world where relationships are dissected down to every detail, John protected his by vanishing. His withdrawal wasn't apathy. It was a clear understanding of the line between public life and private love. And perhaps that's why he has remained at peace to this day, while many of his peers have drifted, broken, or died in loneliness. Not every artist needs the spotlight, and not every hero stands at center stage. Some choose to love quietly, live kindly, and leave with their dignity intact. John Deacon is one of them. Legacy and influence. John Deacon is not the first name people mention when they talk about Queen. He wasn't the lead singer, didn't play blazing guitar solos, didn't push boundaries like Freddie Mercury, or shine with technical brilliance like Brian May. And yet, that's exactly what makes everything he did all the more memorable. Because he never sought attention, yet still left behind a musical imprint no one could replace. Throughout his time with Queen, John wrote a series of iconic songs, from heartfelt ballads like "You're My Best Friend" to high-energy anthems like "Another One Bites the Dust" and "I Want to Break Free." His songs didn't aim for theatrical flair. They aimed for emotional honesty and direct connection with the listener. Simple, approachable, yet deep enough to resonate across generations. As a bassist, John didn't just keep time. He shaped the rhythmic foundation of many of Queen's most important tracks. His bass lines weren't overly complex, but always appeared exactly where they were needed, building a rock-solid foundation for the rest of the band to shine. With "Another One Bites the Dust," he proved that the bass wasn't just background, it could lead a song to global success. But his impact didn't stop there. John helped expand Queen's musical reach. Through his affinity for funk, soul, and R&B, he nudged the band beyond the boundaries of classic rock and into a space where genres blurred. He was the one who helped Queen connect with African-American audiences, disco lovers, and mainstream pop fans, all without losing the band's distinctive identity. John's influence continued even after he left music. Many next-generation artists have cited him as a role model. Adam Clayton of U2, Guy Berryman of Coldplay, and Nate Mendel of Foo Fighters have all praised his less is more approach to bass playing as a lesson in restraint and effectiveness. In an age where music is often driven by technical showmanship and speed, John Deacon reminds us that depth isn't found in volume. It's found in how far a sound reaches the heart. His name appears on every reissue, every documentary, every tribute to Queen, though he never takes part in them himself. When Queen was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2001, John wasn't there to accept the honor. But no one dared to question that Queen's legacy would be incomplete without him. And perhaps it is precisely his complete retreat from the spotlight that gives his legacy even more weight. While many artists continue to perform, release new albums, or appear on talk shows to keep their names alive, John Deacon lets his music speak for itself. No comebacks, no explanations. John Deacon's greatest legacy isn't measured by the number of songs he wrote or the applause in stadiums. It lies in the fact that the music he created still lives on, still plays, and still brings smiles to people's faces, even though he's been silent for nearly 3 decades. Life today. Since his final appearance with Queen in 1997, John Deacon has all but vanished from public life. No press conferences, no retirement announcements, no nostalgic returns. One day, he simply stopped playing music and never looked back. For most artists, such a disappearance might seem strange, but for John, it may have been the only way to preserve the memory without distortion and to stay true to himself. Today, John lives with his wife, Veronica, in Putney, a quiet residential suburb in South London. In a 19th-century house surrounded by gardens and birdsong rather than traffic noise, he leads a life no one expects from a rock legend. No solo performances, no interviews, no award shows, not even a comment when Bohemian Rhapsody became a global box office sensation in 2018. According to the rare insights shared by those close to him, John spends most of his time with family and in the comfort of simple routines. He's occasionally spotted walking to the local grocery store, visiting a familiar cafe, or taking his dog for a stroll. No bodyguards, no paparazzi, and often not even recognized. This isn't an attempt to hide. He's simply been gone from the spotlight long enough to have faded from view naturally. Though absent, John still holds a major shareholder position in Queen Productions, the the company managing Queen's rights and brand. All major decisions involving the band's legacy, films, advertisements, special projects, must still pass through him. Brian May once shared, "We still send John updates whenever something big happens. He doesn't say much, but it's always clear. He still cares." Thanks to royalties from decades of iconic songs, John continues to earn millions of pounds annually. His net worth is estimated at around £130 million, more than Roger Taylor's and nearly on par with Brian May's. Yet unlike many of his peers, he's never used that fortune to become larger than life. No supercars, no sprawling estates, no art collecting, just a man living modestly and living enough. Fans have long speculated, does John still play bass at home? Does he write music just for himself? No one knows. Maybe he does. Maybe he doesn't. And that very uncertainty, the inability to define John Deacon, is part of what makes him extraordinary. In an era when every artist is everywhere, he's the one who vanished and was never forgotten. John's life today has no applause, but it also has no pressure, no stage, and none of the crashes that come with burnout. What it does have is peace, the rarest luxury the entertainment world almost never allows to exist. John Deacon never set out to become a legend. He didn't seek the spotlight, never fought for the microphone, and never lived like a typical rock star. Yet through his silence, his hauntingly simple melodies, and his decision to step away at the right moment, he left behind a legacy like no other, not just in music, but in how an artist can preserve themselves amid the whirlwind of fame. As the man behind some of Queen's most emotionally resonant hits, and the one who kept not just the rhythm, but the band's internal balance, John Deacon proved one thing. You don't have to be the loudest to be irreplaceable. And when Freddie Mercury passed away, he understood that, for him, Queen was over. He didn't try to prolong what had already been lost. He didn't rebuild the past with replicas. He simply chose silence, retreating with undiminished love for the music, the friendships, and the irreplaceable memories they shared. In an age where everything is consumed too quickly, talent, memories, even people, John Deacon's complete disappearance from public life for nearly 3 decades was not surrender. It was a statement that true art doesn't need to be everywhere, that staying true to oneself can matter more than any spotlight, and it is this very absence that has ensured his name is never forgotten. So what do you think of John Deacon's quiet but profound journey? Was his withdrawal a loss or a beautiful ending? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe to join us as we continue uncovering the untold stories of music's greatest legends.